the Song of Solomon. And we, in the first lesson, primarily camped on the very first verse or so of this great book. It begins with the words, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. And we made the point there that in the first place, we learned that this is a song. And we're not looking to expect this song to be a straight history or a narrative. If it's a challenge to read, maybe the big challenge there is that I expect it to be something that it does not claim to be. It is a challenging book sometimes to follow, but poetry can be like that. But it also has a great power. You know, why does God speak to us in poetry? Why does He command us to sing? There's a great power in song. There's a great emotional impact in song. There's a beauty in song. And so that's what, if I'm looking for the right thing, maybe I won't have as hard a time finding what I'm looking for. In the second place, it is the Song of Songs. And that also is important, I believe. There are many critics of this book, and you will read books written about the Song of Solomon that seem to have a low impact, low idea of it, a low evaluation of it. And they complain about it. And maybe some of us have done some complaining about it through the years. God forgive me for that. I think it's important for me to recognize that it's not my job to judge the song. The song is given by God. It is superlative as it's given. It really is a question of when will I grow up to the point that I will come and catch up and appreciate the message of this song. So it's the Song of Songs, and it's Solomon's song. I think we looked last time, we were together, at one example, and you can find this in different books, scholars that write about this book. One fellow said, the Song of Solomon. And he, after he got through talking, what you found out was, he said, this book was not written by Solomon, and it actually doesn't contain any information about Solomon. It's just a figure that somebody else wrote in Solomon's name to try to get attention. And he thinks that's what the Holy Spirit put in the Bible. I don't believe that. I don't think you believe that. I think this is the Song of Solomon. And if that's the case, we need to be mindful of all that God teaches us about Solomon and his history. There's a good bit of it. And we looked at that last time as well. Beloved of the Lord, this chosen one, trained in the law, blessed by God, gifted by God. But he makes sad decisions, especially the last half of his life. He wanders away from God. He makes a wreck of his life. And I think he reflected on that later in life. And through the Holy Spirit, we have works like Ecclesiastes, where he looks back on a foolish life and writes about his mistakes and all the dead-end roads that he took, knowing what God taught, but looking for something else and finding a lot of pain in the process. And certainly a part of that involved his romantic life, if you want to call it that. Solomon, as we know, had 700 wives and 300 concubines. And Solomon said, if you're looking for a bitter life, I can tell you how to get there. Just make it your ambition to use women, and you'll find users in return who are unworthy. He found a lot of those. And he sort of got what he was looking for. And so Ecclesiastes, I think, is a book filled with that kind of reflection. And it's given to us to point us a different direction. There are a lot of views, as you may well be aware, of what the Song of Solomon is about. My view, and there are better students than I am who disagree, so I'll just grant that. My view of the book is that it's very much in the same vein as Ecclesiastes. It does not refer to a time late in Solomon's life. I believe it looks much earlier in his life, but it's written late in his life, no doubt. And again, reflecting on what was missed. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon talks about there's a way. The way of the wise man is not chasing after things and chasing after women and chasing after other lust of the flesh. It's found in enjoying life as God gives it, as God intended it. And a part of that involves a home life. To enjoy life, Ecclesiastes 9:9, with the wife whom you love all the days of your vain life, that has been given you under the sun, limited as it is. There's a way to live life and make it count, a happy life, a truly happy life that Solomon never found. And when Solomon writes about the wife of your youth, it's advice that I think he gives wishing he had taken it. You know, marriage as God intended it, romantic love, monogamous relationship as God intended it, wedded love, is one of the great gifts that God has given. It's not good that man should be alone. And therefore, he made a help suitable for him. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. I'm sure you've noticed this. There's no room here for polygamy, is there? That was not God's plan from the beginning. And that's certainly not something that is elevated in the Song of Songs. There's something greater, something better. It's something that Solomon, I believe, later in his life reflected on as something he missed. And he's trying in this Song of Songs to help me not to miss it. So let's go into verse 2 of this great song. And it reads, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine." Him and me. We got to figure out who the him and me is. Because these are the lovers. I think the woman in this situation is pretty well universally agreed on. This is a woman identified only as the Shulamite later on in the work. She is a country girl. I don't mean she's a simpleton. Those are not the same thing. But she has spent her life outside, and she has spent her life up north away from the city. And she has a beloved. And I believe in the very first chapter, though he's not named either by name, he's identified as being a shepherd, one who feeds his flock. And that he has captivated her heart. In fact, there's a description there of them being spouses. I don't think that demands that they were married, but perhaps betrothed. I think that at least suggests that. And she is devoted to him no matter what else happens. This shepherd is never far away from her heart, although she is far away from him. And her desire for him is that pure desire that God intended for married couples to have, that we ought to aspire to. Verse 16 of chapter 2. "My beloved is mine and I am his," she says there. Now again, with all due respect to the good students who see this as a love story of Solomon and this woman, does that really fit Solomon in any part in his life? Listen, it's just you and me. When was it ever just you and me? There were always scores, hundreds, thousands, 1,000 women. And I think Solomon thought that was the smart thing to do. And he could have given you many good reasons why he chose that path. But when you get old and you look back in life, you realize, you know, the pain that comes from the decisions you make that are not godly. One reason why I believe this is so important for young people is it's a message to teach us about making good decisions early on. Solomon did not do that. I believe this Shulamite did. In fact, I believe she is really the center of the story. It's the song of Solomon. But it's really the song that centers on the Shulamite and her choices. And think about it. It begins with her words. I think in many ways she is the focus of this story, and there's a reason for that. So that's what I believe is going on here. I believe Solomon is in the picture, but it's the Shulamite and her beloved that are the real center of attention. Let me go back to 1:2. "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for his love is better than wine. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for his love is better than wine." That's not right, is it? That's not the way it reads. The way it reads is, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine." You notice how the pronoun changed? Listen, I don't know about English grammar. You can ask my old teachers about that. But even I can notice a difference there. Let him, third person, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. But the last part of that sentence is the second person. For thy love is better than wine. That bothered me. That bothered me for a long time. And I'm not sure that I know to now how to explain that. To some, there is no need for explanation. It doesn't matter. It's not important. In fact, if you have some modern speech translations, they just change the pronoun to match. Well, how about that? But it doesn't seem like it's given that way. It's given this way. And I wondered why. Why was that so? There are some creative answers to that. One fellow said he just imagined that maybe she was talking about Solomon, and while she was talking, he just comes in the room. So that she says, let him kiss me with a kiss. Oh, there he is right there. Thy love is better than... I didn't seem to be the most likely explanation. Let me suggest an explanation that you may not find to be likely. But the more I read the song, the more I believe it to be true. When she speaks of this beloved, he's not there. Him, more distant. But I'll tell you in another sense, when she speaks of him, she's looking him in the face. Even when he's not present with her. Thine. I believe at least that's true as you go through the book, if we've got the right take on the book. The Shulamite speaks of and to her lover, even though he's not present with her physically. He's never far from her heart. And I believe that Solomon, in the very first words of this, gives us that clue so that we're expecting this great woman to be speaking of her lover and to her lover, even if he's not there. You can consider that. Let me mention something else about this second verse. The word kiss. Let him kiss me. It's interesting how this word's used in the Bible. Here's a long entry, not really that long, but several sentences here from a good dictionary of Old Testament words. And one point that's made in this is, if you take the time to read it all and go through the references, is that actually the word kiss is not often used in a romantic context. It's used among friends, it's used among family, it's used to give blessings. Sometimes it's used in reference to idolatry, sometimes the worship of the Messiah. But there's no doubt that it's used romantically here. And it is sometimes a romantic gesture. It can be friendly and it can be romantic. And here it is the latter. And in talking about that, you can read that one fellow writing about that says that it's a romantic kiss is a gesture filled with tenderness and affection, expressing love, care, emotional closeness. This kiss often occurs in intimate moments or during times of vulnerability and comfort. Simple physical act can ignite moments of intimacy and deep connection between two. And I bring this up to say, do not underestimate the power of a kiss. This has reference, I think, to those who are not married. I've known of couples, young couples, who made it their Christians, who made it their determination. They would not kiss until they were married. That was their conviction. They thought that was the way to go. And I admire, their carefulness. That may be a choice that a young person makes. If they do, I don't think it's a silly choice. But I would say whether that's their choice or not, you have to recognize the power behind that gesture and the feelings that it can ignite before the time to ignite them. And for those who are married and who are neglectful of physical intimacy and of physical gestures along this line, there are wives who starve for that kind of attention and affection. Maybe some husbands, but oftentimes wives who are. A kiss that suggests that closeness there, that suggests that affection there, that belonging. A kiss is no light matter in this context. It has great power, and it ought to be thought of and used properly and wisely. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Thy love is better than wine. Let me make a point in passing here. The pulpit commentary, some of you guys may have seen that, is quite a large volume. I don't remember, 23 volumes, something like that. It's a work that comes out around the turn of the 20th century, and it has some value to it. But like a lot of commentaries, it takes the view about the song that the Song of Solomon is a strict allegory. That is to say, that Solomon is mentioned here, but it's not Solomon. And the Shulamite's mentioned, but there was no such person. That Solomon and this girl, they see two here. Solomon and this girl and their relationship is simply a metaphor, a figure for, well, they would say Christ and the church. Maybe some Jewish writer would say it's God and Israel. And that's all it is. And so they will go through this, and every phrase, they can dream up some spiritual lesson about, what this means. As an example, if you look in the pulpit commentary on this passage, you find this. The kisses must be interpreted in a figurative sense, or the sacred character of the whole book must be removed. In other words, this can't be a book about two people kissing. I mean, that's just not, you can't have that. That ruins the whole thing. It must be something higher and nobler. As if romantic love is somehow too shameful, too low a topic to discuss. Mr. Albert Barnes, in his Barnes Notes, takes a similar view. Christian expositors have regarded this, the passage we're looking at, as a prayer of the church under the Old Covenant for a closer communion with the Godhead through the incarnation. I have to admit, that's not the first thought I had when I read that verse. And I think the whole idea of that, that this just is too base to have this as a human romantic relationship is misguided. Frankly, I think this is the book that helps us the most to appreciate the greatness of that gift of God. And there's nothing shameful or low about it in its proper context. It's glorious. One more thing about verse 2, that word wine. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine. You find that several times in the book. And by the way, I don't expect you to copy all this. If you want these charts, you're welcome to them. I've got some study notes that I put together on the book, and if you want that, you can make an electronic copy of it. That's fine. So anyway, if those might be interested, you're welcome to the material. But the word there is yayin. It's a common word for wine. And I thought this was just a typical of what I found. This is from the Word Study Dictionary. Good source. I appreciate it. It's easy to use for a guy like me who doesn't know Hebrew to help me understand Hebrew words. And in talking about this word, he says, among other things, this. It indicates the juice of the grapevine and its fruits, a common drink for refreshment in the Old Testament. He gives some references there. Now, he recognizes the fact that this is not a word that suggests hard liquor. Not necessarily. He goes on to point out it can be that which intoxicates a person. The juice of the grape is yayin, that's wine in one sense. Now, you can take that and try to encourage the fermentation of it and not cut it with water and drink enough of it, and you can get drunk off of it. No question about that. We know that from the Scriptures. Even though they didn't have the modern distillation process, you could still make something to get drunk off of. But having acknowledged that the word has a wide use, this is what he says about our word in our passage. True love is said to surpass the intoxication of wine. Song 1-2-4-10. And I just don't believe that is the point of these passages. Again, acknowledging these smart folks. But I don't think that that's the part of the word or the part of its use that this song is encouraging. When you look at how the word wine is used, and it's used several times, all these references, 1-2-4, 2-4, and so on. All of these verses, all these times you'll find wine used. it's used as a comparative quality, that love is better than. Love is more memorable than. He talks about the wine house, a center for hospitality, a center for entertainment. He talks about drinking wine with honey and milk. Obviously here is a food, not intended to be something to get drunk off of. He compares it with the sweetness in the old translation in 7 and verse 9. My beloved goes down sweetly, or smoothly, yours may say. So it's like the best wine. What's the idea of going down smoothly or sweetly, as opposed to bitterness? I'm no expert on alcohol, but even if you take medicine that has alcohol in it, you can taste the bitterness of that. But this is something, the opposite of the other spectrum of bitterness. It's a sweetness of fellowship, I think, between two people. Now, there's another word that's related to wine. It's not the word yayin. It's the word used over in 7:2, mezeg, I think. And it's translated in the Old King James liquor, which may give a very different view than is mixed wine, maybe, in the ESV. And again, when I hear that term mixed drink, the first thing that comes to my mind as the world talks about it is some concoction in which you mix several alcohols to soup up some drink. You got gin and vodka and whatever else, rum or something, and put that all together and it'll walk out of the glass by itself. You know, it's really strong. But that's not, I think, the idea here at all. In fact, Mr. Strong says, this mezeg, from an unused root meaning to mingle, water with wine, tempered wine. That's the exact opposite. When he talks about the mixed drink here, it's not to make it stronger, it is rather to weaken it, to water it down. Another source reads, a masculine noun referring to liquor, mixed wine, it means spiced wine, sweetened and flavored. It was considered desirable and a delightful treat. Not exactly the wording you would use to describe some kind of jet fuel that people want to drink. So, what's the point? The point is, as you're reading through the song, and you read about love is better than wine, I don't agree with the idea that seems very popular, that means, let me tell you, you can get drunker on love than you can on wine. Maybe you can, but I don't think that's what the song is saying. I think he's talking about the sweetness of that relationship. He's not in any way lifting up drunkenness. Instead, what he's doing is he's talking to us about the sweetness. You know, in an age when, there was no refined sugar, there was no Coca-Cola, what you drank was water or maybe milk, but the fruit of the grape was a treat, something desirable. And that's what love is, even more so. Something desirable, sweet in life, in a very special way. Okay. Verse 3. Back in 1:3. Because of the savor of thy good ointments, thy name is as ointment, poured forth. Therefore do the virgins love thee. What's the foundation of the attraction between the Shulamite and her beloved? Well, let's not deny the fact that there's physical attraction here, both ways. If we skip ahead over to chapter 5 and verse 8, it's a little bit funny. Again, the book is not written in linear time, so sometimes it seems like that these women of the court and the Shulamite are at odds. And sometimes it seems like they are together. I think that's because, you have a picture of the early days and a picture of those later days, and they may be interspersed. Over in chapter 5 and in verse 8, I charge you, the Shulamite says, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that you tell him I am sick of love. If you run across this my beloved, that's a strange thing to say about Solomon, isn't it? Anyway, you tell him I am lovesick. And they respond, And what is thy beloved more than another beloved, O thou fairest among women? What is thy beloved more than another beloved, that thou dost charge us so? Again, that's a strange response if the beloved is Solomon. But it's not strange if this is somebody they don't know. I tell you what she does. She goes on to tell him about her beloved. This is the ESV, verse 10 on the chart here. My beloved is radiant and ruddy, distinguished among 10,000. His head is fine as gold, his locks wavy, black as a raven. His eyes are like doves by the stream of water, bathed in milk, sitting beside a full pool. His cheeks are like beds of spices, mounds of sweet-smelling herbs. His lips are lilies dripping with liquid myrrh. His arms are rods of gold set with jewels. His body is polished ivory bedecked with sapphires. His legs as alabaster columns set on bases of gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as cedars. His mouth is most sweet. He is altogether desirable. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. It's obvious that she finds him very attractive physically. There's nothing shameful about that. There's nothing wrong with it. Sexual attraction, physical attraction is part of the process. It's part of that desire that God gives. It's interesting, too, as we divide the chapter there for some reason, because what's chapter 6, verse 1 say, if you're following along? After hearing that description, these women of Jerusalem say, well, where's he gone that we can go with you? That sounds pretty good. But anyway, so, part of it, no doubt. But I think the point made in 1:3 is that there's something deeper than just a physical attraction. Go back there. Because the savor of thy good ointments, thy name is as ointment poured forth. Therefore do the virgins love thee. The ESV reads, your anointing oils are fragrant. Your name is oil poured forth. What do you mean your name is oil poured forth? In the first place, somebody taught me that there's a play on words here in the original language, that oil is shemen and name is shem, so there's sort of a connection between the two. But when you talk about the name, anybody's name, as like one old brother said, one's name stands for all that they are. It really represents a person's, not their looks, but their character. Their name, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. So somebody's character, that is the basis of reputation. And I believe what this verse tells me is that certainly she finds him attractive, but what she finds attractive, what's mentioned first is his name is good. And I think that's another important point. What did Solomon write to us about as a jewel in a swine's snout, so is a fair woman without discretion? Yeah, that goes both ways. Now, it's no bargain to find somebody who's good looking, but on the inside hollow or worse, rotten. That certainly was not the way she felt about her beloved. Let me look with you back in chapter 1 and verse 4 about a stranger in a strange land. I think that's really what we find here. Let me read these words. Draw me, we will run after thee. The king hath brought me into his chambers. We will be glad and rejoice in thee. We will remember thy love more than wine. The upright love thee. I'm black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem. As the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. Tell me, O thou whom my soul loveth, where thou feedest, where thou makest thy flock to rest at noon. For why should I be as one that turns aside by the flocks of thy companions? If thou know not, O thou fairest among women, go thy way forth by the footsteps of the flock, and feed thy kids beside the shepherd's tents. What's going on here? Well, I think in the first place it just represents that in the early days when she first arrived in this company, she felt out of place. And by the way, she was out of place. What she wants? She wants to be drawn away from where she is. Where is she? She's there in the king's chambers. But she wishes to be drawn away from that. Again, very strange if this is a story of Solomon and his wife. The king's chambers, I don't know whether that's Jerusalem. It certainly could be. It could be some palace he had up at some other place, maybe up north where she was from. I'm not sure about that. I do know that wherever it was, you would have found splendor. I think that's a fair assumption to make. In 2 Chronicles 9, you remember the story about the Queen of Sheba who came to visit Solomon? I think this is in Jerusalem. And 2 Chronicles 9 gives us a little bit of an insight there about the glory of all that was going on. She saw the house he had built. Verse 4, she saw the meat at his table. She saw how the servants were dressed. She saw all the grandeur and glory, and the text says there was no more spirit in her. And she said to the king, it was a true report that I heard in my own land of thine acts and thy wisdom. Howbeit, I believed not their words until I came, and mine eyes have seen it. And behold, not one half of the greatness of thy wisdom was told to me, for thou exceeds the fame that I heard. Happy are thy men. Happy are these thy servants. The glory of Solomon's wealth and of his setting. Verse 20 of the same chapter talks about all the drinking vessels were of gold. Silver was counted as nothing. It was a grand picture wherever Solomon was. But that's not catching the eye of this woman. That's not what she's looking for. She may be in his inner apartments, maybe they're in Jerusalem. Not a place that normally visitors would see, and I'm sure the private apartments would be glorious, luxurious, opulent. But the desire of the Shulamite is to leave that place. You know, she longs to escape. What's the language he uses here? Draw me. That word draw, if you look up in a concordance, suggests the idea of pulling out of a location. It's the word that's used over in Genesis 37 when they throw Joseph in the pit, his brothers had, and they drew him out of it. There's a sense in which that's the way she sees her situation. I'd just like to be drawn out of this and drawn out by her beloved. Very strange if this is all about Solomon and his wife. But it makes good sense if you've got a woman who cannot be swayed by the grandeur of her surroundings because her heart is for her beloved. I am my beloved and he is mine. Again, talking about being out of place. Look in verse 5. I am black but comely, ye daughters of Jerusalem. That's not a racial question, is it? I think it's evident from the context that this woman has spent her time outdoors. And she goes on to explain why. She says, my mother's children were angry with me, and they made me keep the vineyard outside. I suppose it was like a lot of times in history. Usually people who work with their hands were seen as the lower class, and if you were upper class, that meant that you didn't have dirty hands and you didn't have a suntan being out in the sun because you were in the shade, and so that puts you in a different category. So I think that's the basis of what's going on here. Here are these women of the harem, women, the virgins of Solomon, and they're all pampered, and they've all lived these opulent lives, and then here's this woman who comes from the vineyard. Beautiful though she is, she feels self-conscious about the fact that she's not come from a refined background. And she blames that on her brothers. You know, it's interesting too, when you read the song, and you look for references to the family of the Shulamite, you do find a few. You find several references to her mother, and she'll write about her mother's house. That's a strange way to say that, isn't it? And she'll write about her brothers, obviously. We'll hear from them in chapter 8. But when you don't really find any reference to the father, except there's a reference in chapter 7 when a speaker refers to her, the Shulamite, as a prince's daughter. I think it's Solomon speaking there. Now, what he meant by prince, we could talk about that. Maybe I don't know. But that's the only reference I can think of to her father. It talks about her mother's sons. It just seems the evidence would suggest, it's a song. It's not intended to be a genealogy or a family history. It seems like her father has been out of the picture, dead maybe years ago. And so her brothers fill the role of being the father in the family and raising their younger sister. And they've been hard on her. She thinks way too hard. Let me just offer this point in passing. Later on we'll hear from these brothers. And I think when you listen to them, when you get their side of it, what you find out is these brothers had a pretty good idea about trying to help their sister to grow up to be moral and to be what she ought to be. You know, I'm not saying that all of the overly dramatic self-pity in the world belongs to teenage girls. That's not true, but some of it does. And I tend to think, though we love this girl, that maybe she's feeling a little sorry for herself here. Oh, I've had such a rough upbringing. You sure about that? You notice where you are? You got a king falling over you, and you've got a beloved. Maybe you turned out better than you're given your rearing credit for. So anyway, but she feels put upon by her upbringing, and she expresses that. So she is looking again for that reunion with her beloved. Tell me, O thou whom my soul loves, where you feed your flock. Now, many of those who see this as Solomon and his wife, and that's the story of Solomon's honeymoon with wife number, I don't know what, they say that, yes, she talks about a shepherd, but really she means Solomon. She's just a simple girl, and so she uses that. That's the way she thinks of a king. He's just a big shepherd. She is from the country. She's not stupid. I don't think that's fair to her. I think she knows the difference in a king, and she knows the difference in a shepherd. So I have no reason to believe that she's not talking about a shepherd who happens to be the one that holds her heart. And her point is, I want to be with him. Draw me. We will run after thee. Verse 8 seems to be the response of the women of the harem, the virgins, who say, well, if you don't know, you just need to go out there and find the animal trail and find him. There's a bit of contempt at this point. Early on, it was not a friendly relationship. It was a contentious relationship. She felt out of place. By the way, she was out of place. She was not like the rest. These women, however they got there, their ambition was they wanted to be with the king and be wife number, you name it, and to have all the trappings that go with that, and all the power that went with that, and maybe even be the mother of the heir, and that was their ambition. That is not her ambition. She's got an entirely different future in mind. What kind of future do you have in mind, by the way? What kind of ambition do you have? A lot of young people who grow up, maybe they're not married to a prince or a princess, but they have all kind of carnal ambition, and that's what they're looking for, and that's what they put first. I'll tell you, there's a price to be paid for that. Solomon is the witness to that. Solomon's the witness to that. Let me, we're about out of time, but let me go to chapter 1 and verse 9. Because I think for the first time Solomon speaks, if I understand the book. And these are the words recorded. I have compared thee, O my love, to a company of horses in Pharaoh's chariots. Thy cheeks are comely with rows of jewels, thy neck with chains of gold. We will make thee borders of gold with studs of silver. It may be that in that last expression we have the court speaking, or the women of the court speaking, but I believe that these are the words of Solomon. You might say, well, how do you know that? He doesn't say Solomon said, and that's right. He doesn't say that throughout. It has to be discern. By the way, I remember talking to a good friend and somebody that I think is a good student. And they made the suggestion, you know what you ought to do is just get you, because at the time I was struggling with this book, and they said, you ought to just get you one of those Bibles that notes out to the side. Maybe you got one like that. He, and then they'll say, she. Or maybe just say Solomon or the Shulamite. Or, yeah, it will. But you understand, and I understand, that's somebody's opinion. I got a Bible, and it does that. It says he and she and others, but they only got one he, and I find more than one he. So already we're parting ways here. And so I'm not saying they're wrong, wrong and I'm right. I'm just saying it's still an opinion that has to be discerned from the text. What I would encourage you to do is read this book and read it and read it and read it to the point where you feel confident in making your own note about, I believe this is Solomon speaking. Here's the Shulamite speaking. I think that's the way God gave it, and that's the way he intends for us to discern it. But let me suggest to you, having said all of that, you just can't imagine this being anybody else but Solomon, can you? Look at what he says. He says, I've compared thee, O my love, to a company of horses in Pharaoh's chariots. Now, boy, that sounds like Solomon, doesn't it? Now, there are those who think, well, and you may have heard this, maybe you've thought this, that's a pretty odd compliment. We don't try that with our spouse, would we? We wouldn't come home and say, hon, you just remind me of one of Pharaoh's chariots. Maybe one of his horses. That's probably not going to get a lot of mileage. But, and it's a real point. You got to remember how Solomon loved horses. I mean, he loved them. He had thousands of them. And he knew horses. And he appreciated them. He thought they were beautiful. So from Solomon's mouth, this is not maybe as strange as it might seem. But having said that, I still say it does sound a bit like he looks at her as a possession. He had thousands of horses, exactly, that he had gotten from Egypt. Yes, and he was proud of them. And he would show them off. I don't think he wanted to marry them. You know, there's a difference between looking at a spouse as opposed to as a possession. And I think that maybe this language unintentionally belies the problem. Something else that you find in this little passage. He talks about the jewels and the chains of gold and the ornaments of gold and silver. And the idea again seems to be, here's this girl from the country, and maybe she's just dressed in rather plain garments, especially compared to the court. And Solomon said, we'll fix that. Maybe he already has some. Don't you like this better? Doesn't this look great? And we'll do more. But maybe it was not, we don't really have a record from her about how she felt about all this. And maybe how inadequate she might have been made to feel by what he was doing and what he was asking and expecting from her. One fellow wrote, Solomon seeks to make her glad with the thought of continued residence in the royal court by the promise of costly and elegant ornaments. But how she felt about that is not recorded at this particular point. Well, I would like to go further, but I will stop here. I appreciate your kind attention. We're going a little bit slow, I recognize. We'll try not to belabor this. But, I think about it this way, too. As much as I've neglected this book through the years, it's certainly, I don't think I could, if I took the rest of the year and talked about Song of Solomon, and I won't, that I wouldn't make up for the time that I've lost with it. But I do appreciate your input, and I appreciate your questions. If you think I've missed it or if I'm making a mess of this, I'd be glad for you to talk with me about that and help me with it. But mainly what I'd like to encourage you to do is to read it. Read the song and reread it. As I said, you can take a few minutes, take 15 minutes, even if you're an average reader, and read through this entire work. And I think that's the way to do it. Read through this entire work and just meditate on it and let it run over you and let it seep in. And you might find a lot of questions, especially if you're a young person. This is maybe one of the first times you've really tried to study this book. You might find a lot of questions and not many answers. Let me give you some encouragement. The answers will come. The answers will come. It may take a little while, maybe not, but the answers will come. Just don't give up on this book because it's a blessing. It's the Song of Songs. Okay. We got the right song, 314. Okay. If you haven't already, you might turn in your book to 314. We're going to sing this song. And if you tonight would desire to be married to Christ, if you would desire to become His own, if you desire tonight to be as a child of God who's wandered from Him, a returnee to Him, that'd be a great time. We'd be glad to help you if we can. Let us know how while we stand, while we sing. Will you come?